actually, do you think as a fan that you should have the right to be formally consulted over big changes to the sport itself? You know, for example, if the sport proposed changing back to a winter sport. So it's just, you know, it's trying to get a sense of how people feel, and then there's a space for people to say things, you know, to put their views down. We call free text, just writing down some stuff about, you know, what do you know, any other comments. So it is just meant to take the temperature, give us a rough understanding of where things are. And as I said, I mean, you know, we're heading towards 1,000 responses, and it's good. It's really good. And people have provided lots of information. And then the final bit is also, you know, the plan is to continue to do some work in rugby league and to take this on to another step. And so I'm asking for people to leave their contact details if they want to be involved on an ongoing basis. Then we will be coming back to fans of rugby league clubs who've taken part in the survey. I'm not totally certain exactly what form that will take yet, but certainly we'll be wanting to talk with people, listen to fans a bit more and get more detail, really. So it's exciting, and it's, I'll emphasise it's something that I've done solely as Think Fan Engagement. There's no involvement of any other organisation. I do it because this is what we do. Is we look at fan engagement, and we think that needs to be done in rugby league at the moment. It's an interesting piece of work. And I think it's something, dare I say, it's sort of something that might be needed.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of talk in our sport at the moment about whether we need an independent kind of board that's oversees the sport to kind of protect some aspects of the sport. And so you coming at this from an independent outsider's angle, I think is a benefit. So I would encourage anyone listening who hasn't filled in the survey yet to go and do it and post it onto the fan forums and boards that you're on as well to get more people to fill it in. Because I think it is important that this is an independent thing that you're doing here, Kev, with those outsider views, that then people won't be fearing that you've come at this with an agenda. Other than to make sure the fans are listened to. That's my
agenda, because I think clubs are better, and as I said, I've seen that example in Warrington Wolves, and the conversations I had with Ryan Sparks of the time he was at Featherstone. You know, when clubs are listening, their jobs are easier, their life is easier. It's a hard enough job running a club. If you don't have that element of listening, then you're making your job harder.
Well, when you're engaged with your fan base, those things that sometimes might put some people off, like bad runs of form or what have you, don't seem as important, because you get that feeling of togetherness, don't you?
Well, I think so. Look, you know, in football, I often point to Norwich City, you know, who got relegated a couple of years ago. It's not an irregular thing. No, you know, some people were grumbling, of course. Some people said the manager's not good enough, but there weren't, you know, people were not demonstrating outside the director's box, demanding the resignation of this and that person, because they understood what was going on. And that's because they're a highly engaged club and a highly engaged fan base. They're in the top 10 every year of the Fan Engagement Index, which is one of the things I publish. You know, and they're, as I said, in your own sport, Warrington Wolves, when the COVID stuff was going on, and clubs had to work out what they were going to do financially, organisationally. The thing I liked about Carl is he had an open mind, and I know he was speaking to people in football about how to deal with things like this, and you know, I think that kind of practice, and there are bound to be other people in the sport who are also like that. I think that sort of practice also needs to be encouraged. But as I said, in the end, I need to find, you know, it's my mission to find out how the fans feel about it, because I think they're often the people who are the most neglected.
And so what would then be the next step after you've, you know, gathered your report, you've reached out to the people who want to be contacted? Obviously, you've got a link there with Carl at the Wire. Would it be to approach the clubs and the governing bodies and the Super League and the RFL with your research?
You know, to be honest with you, I'm not in it for. I mean, one thing I'm not in it for is a whole series of consultancy contracts. Stuff like this comes out of it. Well, that's great, and that would mean that I can do more. But what I'm doing is I'm taking this each bit at a time. You know, I'm coming in and I'm an outsider, as you say. I'm asking questions of the sport and of its fans and of the clubs and the governing bodies through this survey. We'll disseminate that. We'll then look at what to do next. It's not, you know, I haven't laid out a path. The thing that I felt was most important was to give voice to how fans feel about their clubs and how they feel about their involvement or not, or lack of involvement in their clubs and in the sport. So we'll see what comes next.
I think that just reinforces the fact that you're coming from this open-minded and without an agenda. Yeah. So I think that's not at all a negative, Kev. You've talked a little bit about Carl Fitzpatrick and how you've spoken to him before. I think this is the time we can start plugging some of your output, really, Kev, because Carl Fitzpatrick featured on an episode of your podcast that you do.
He did, the Fan Engagement Pod, yeah. He just, again, I mentioned Ryan Sparks several times at Bradford, who was at Featherstone and Bradford Bulls previously. I interviewed him, Ryan put me in touch, and I just came away really impressed with him and just really liked. So there's an episode there, it's one of the earlier episodes, it might be 8 or 10 or something. If you look at... if you just search Fan Engagement Pod, it will come up. I think there is a series called the Fan Engagement Podcast. It's not that, it's called the Fan Engagement Pod. And you'll find it there. If you search Carl Fitzpatrick Fan Engagement Pod, you'll find it on your search engine, on Google, on Bing or whatever. It's really worth a listen because it's just, it's a bloke who I think is doing good things at his club. And gave me, I could see that there, it's good to hear from other sports and not constantly be only looking at football, and to be realising, look, there's some people out there doing good stuff. So yeah, just search Fan Engagement Pod, Carl Fitzpatrick, and you'll find the episode.
And if people want a bit more of a flavour of what you do, they can go to the website, which is fanengagement.net, isn't it? That gives a bit more information. That's got your fan index details there as well on there, hasn't there, about what you do for the football?
The fan engagement index, which measures and rates fan engagement in English football, and has become a dare I say it, the kind of gold standard of how clubs are rated on their relationships with their fans, and measures the dialogue, the actual meetings and things that happen, and all the listening that goes on, the governance, the way that those things are enforced, that they have to happen, and then the transparency, which is, do we actually know what's going on in the meetings? Do we know the decisions that are being made so we can understand the process? So that's what the Fan Engagement Index is. Yeah, you read about that. You can register for the Fan Engagement Network if you're interested, whether you work in the game or whether you're just a fan or you're part of a supporters trust or group.
So if anyone's listening to this that does work at any of the clubs in maybe their marketing or communications areas, certainly that's something to be having a look at, isn't it? Because they'll get some connections and ideas from that.
Yes, indeedy, absolutely. Fanengagement.net, everything's there, and the podcast is in fact hosted. It's linked on there as well.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for giving us that oversight, Kevin. It's really exciting from my point of view that someone outside of our sport's looking at our sport, because so often we're fighting for attention in the media and things like that. So you come in looking for us, which is not the way it normally is. It's fantastic, I think.
No, as I said, I think it's a great sport. I think it's got great characteristics. It's got a great story. It's got a great history. I think it's got great fans, and I'm interested in how all this works. So I'm going through an education process as much as anything else. So it's exciting for me to be doing this.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks for coming on. I hope it gets you over that thousand submissions line as well. That'd be great news if we could do that from this. And I guess we'll be open to having you back on when things have been rounded out, Kev. I think that'd be really interesting too.
Absolutely, I look forward to it. I'll definitely be back on again.
Great stuff. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Kevin there. To recap a few details, the main thing to do is head to fanengagement.net. There you'll see the Rugby League survey at the top of the homepage, plus links to find out more. about the Fan Engagement Index, the Fan Engagement Network, plus the Fan Engagement Pod as well. Want to add to your subscriptions there? Don't worry, you don't have to do all the work. I'll put a link in the episode description and make sure we link to the social media pages when we put this up as well. So whilst you're listening, head over to a Super League Pod on Twitter or facebook.com/Super League Pod, and you should see some links there. For the SLP family, the survey actually will look and feel pretty comfortable because it's on a Google form, our old friends, the Google form. So we've all used those for this show many a time, so it should be straightforward. Whilst I've got your attention, a bit of SLP housekeeping. As the fixture lists get a little crazy in August, so will the show fixtures schedule is the word I was looking for. We're going to try and limit the amount of 2-round shows we do because they take too long, which means you lucky buggers will be getting 2 shows a week a couple of times soon. We'll have our normal show next Monday, the 26th of July. Then we'll look to do a show just recapping the midweek Super League action. That'll be on the out on either late on the Friday or maybe the Saturday morning. The end of this month, before the next show will then come up midweek that following week, which will cover the Sunday and Monday action, plus all the big news topics and other results and all the stuff you know what we do from around the world of rugby league. So just a reminder really to make sure you are prompt with your fan match reviews to give us plenty to talk about on those episodes. And until then, everyone, keep safe and keep enjoying the greatest game of all, Rugby League.